Whereas all
Go ahead.
the consultants and other team.
As the bell tolls, we say, bring out your dead. Please place yourself in the position. It's a small, intimate crowd this evening, should be quite fun. So I put up a brief agenda here. Ryan will tell us when he would like to take a break, or if you guys want to plow through and get to the very end, that's fine. There's plenty of time to go along and plenty of pizza for this evening too. By the way, the pizza was sponsored by ResMed, the company I work for. Yay! And of course, our topic of the evening, Bitcoin. Is the looking focused okay from a presentation perspective? Everybody's eyes looking good. Great. So there are a couple of new people here. I already know that. You don't have to raise your hand. You just ask, well, why do we meet? So I throw up the mission statement here. Most of the regulars, which I think are here, we all know it's kind of to share the technology around town about Java or related technologies. And as a point of fact, we have Bitcoin coming in, which is kind of a cool aspect. And there is a related technology with Java, which we'll hear about. Of course, easy to become a member. Just show up to the meetings. You can sign up to the Yahoo groups, email-wise, to be notified on stuff. And then if you're members of some of the other groups, the meetups, we're starting to try to do awesome postings, particularly the Android group. So it's kind of related. Become a member. If you have ideas for presentations, you can tell me about them, but it's better to give me a speaker. Schedule that presentation. So for upcoming stuff, December 16th, we have Ryan from Philosophical Stuff coming in to talk about wrestling, or at least what he's like media doing wrestling right. And this is in preparation for their tour in March, so they're also going to be presenting in February. So another presenter will come in. So it's really pretty cool getting this kind of stuff coming. At this time, I open it up for a word from our sponsor, and since our sponsor and Bell, the word is we're hiring a mobile team, so 2 iOS developers and 2 Android developers. So that's going. You can check out the ResMed site. We're putting together our first mobile team here in San Diego. You may have saw earlier I was trying to play a video about Strides. That's a ResMed product called S Plus. You can buy it on Amazon, $49.99, something like that. It comes out of our team that's actually in Dublin. They put together hardware and software working iOS and Android. It's a desk side monitor. You put it on your nightstand. It monitors wirelessly how you sleep, so there's no electrodes on your body or anything. And the app on your phone gives you a sleep score. So it's a way that ResMed is looking at enticing you to, hey, find out how well you're sleeping. If you're having trouble, you wake up tired, go see your doctor, and okay, maybe CPAP sheets. Help you sleep better than that also. So, that's that word from our sponsor. Is there anyone else out there looking for work? Okay. So just, who are you? What you looking for?
Hi, I'm Alexa. This is my first SDJAP meeting. Moved to San Diego from Chicago not that long ago. So looking to get back in the field, took some time off. Just looking for senior Java positions, front end, back end, RESTful services, Android. It's really nice to see such a big turnout.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for coming. Anyone else? And then we turn it over to those who are hiring. So ResMed has already got their spill. Is there any other people looking to hire? We'll go for the direct hires first.
I work with Kaiser Permanente Medical Informatics. We're doing natural language processing. And we're in Carmel Valley. And we have problems finding people, so resumes are welcome.
Okay, cool. So we have one person.
Yeah.
There's a link. That's really good. So it sounds interesting. The topics there. You're doing kind of voice recognition stuff.
No, actually, we're analyzing position notes to sort of detect information on sort of long. Let me know for sure. We've been trying for a while and we've been having difficulties. Well, we have a top group so
Okay.
as well, but we're looking for developers at a lot of different levels. We work on sort of analyzing text using I guess Watson technology.
Okay.
So we use Uema and this stuff.
Yeah.
Pretty good stuff.
Challenging aspect to try to understand how a dog does.
Humans can't even read what doctors do.
I know it's amazing. We have half the team is doctors. So
And they type.
I know how to scribble it.
Okay, so on to some of our recruiting friends.
Yeah,
Please.
so I'm Susie, and
Not Eric.
so we're dedicated Java recruiters for tech systems. So we hire for multiple positions. Obviously, Kaiser's actually one of our
Ryan
partners.
works with us, yes.
So yeah, if you guys are ever interested in kind of hearing what's out there, or anything, any companies we can keep you in the loop about. A lot of our approach is going to be proactive because, as you know, I think the longest I've worked with a Java developer that they stayed on the market is 10 days. So it's definitely good to know, like, beforehand what you're looking for, environments, just helping out with your resume. So we'll leave our business cards over here if you're interested. And then also, I wanted to ask you, if you don't mind, we've started a user group for quality engineers. So this isn't for QAs, it's not manual testing. It's the engineers on your team who are testing web services, building out the frameworks, using JUnit, NUnit, Selenium WebDriver, and we actually have our second meeting tomorrow in our UTC office. We're in meetup in case you want to forward that along to anyone on your quality team. Would definitely appreciate that.
So you've done all of your board documents and your test plans and...
Yeah, so these are literally the people who are like going to be developing the testing frameworks for the applications.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're
Cool.
engineers.
Okay, any other announcemos that people want to? All right, I have one, it's kind of fuzzy though, the Atlassian. Does anybody use the Atlassian products, Jira, Confluence, things like that?
Yeah.
They're having a meetup tomorrow afternoon downtown to go over Git, I believe. It's like, I think it starts at 3 o'clock, somewhere downtown, lasts until 5 or 6 o'clock. Alcohol may be involved.
Since it's in what appears to be a bar.
Not really sure about the details after that, but you can probably query for Atlassian on Google. Okay, moving on. Ryan, a Java developer, going to be giving our talk tonight. A little bit about his background. So he's giving this at the Southern Cal Code Camp, or yeah. So it's not language specific, but we're happy to have him here today, and maybe he'll put the Java twist on it for us. And then let's see, our facility sponsors. So Alexandra in the back here, thank you very much. Yay. And then you guys will be the first to know. Our next announcement, unfortunately, is a little sad. We're looking for a new place. So Calcho, our last meeting will be in December. And then we will be meeting in a new location in January. So stay tuned. It's we've got 2 locations already, and I'll let you know as soon as I iron out one of them. But you can always talk to me in private, as where we usually like to drive to or not drive to. So just get ready. January of the new year will be in a new location. Okay. On that note, we'll switch out the computers. I'll turn it over to Ryan. And we'll
Are
get
you
going.
selling tickets for that book?
Oh, wow, thank you, thank you. So, as we do the switcheroo here, I'll hold up the Java Performance Definitive Guide.
How much are the tickets?
$1.
Wow.
Just $1.
Amazing.
And you get a chance to read this book.
You mean you don't know?
So, don't rush. Come on in. We're right here.
Sure.
One
Man,
for
you
one
was Bitcoin, man.
$1. Bitcoin's $3.
Bitcoin, $1, about the same, right? I'll give you $5 for Bitcoin.
Is it a class?
Mint?
I used to get it earlier.
In bit?
Somebody's gonna bring this book tonight.
He wasn't.
Almost
You should have. You're one of the winners of this.
It's not over, is it? No. It just started. Feels like.
I'll get you one. It's mine. It's like my $5 bill. In case I get broken bicycles.
Brazilian dollars, yeah.
Really looking at those arguments.
Oh, this is a great idea, Paul.
Yeah, I've heard a lot.
Oh, right, I just
We may be moving. Yeah, there's gonna be a whole bunch of changes this year.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe, we've got 3 suites in this building. We may just do some
But in the same area.
in the same area, yeah. Chief engineer is up in the Bay Area, but CEO is somewhere, so as long as he's influential, it's me. Somewhere close to the west. But I just haven't had a lot. We're gonna change the we have to give 20 notice, so I feel bad.
Pick one or the other. Pick one or the other. Merry Christmas. Oh, that's the winner. That's the one I want. Where was I? Oh, I went to the dry club meeting on last week. And once I remember, I didn't pick my membership this year, right? So they were asking me, tickets. They're going to give away $150 race. So I get my ticket and I go, call me up for money. And they call my number. Your number. So I go, here, you go. She went and she got the $150 race.
Wow.
Those triathletes, they go crazy for this. They're expensive already.
All right. I'm Ryan. I've been a Java developer for a few years. I've been interested in Bitcoin for about a year and a half, kind of a hobby obsession. So I'm here to talk to you about this fun, new and exciting investment opportunity.
Call now.
This is not financial advice. Okay, so I'm pretty much going to talk about origins of Bitcoin and kind of get down to the technical side because you guys are developers, you guys can handle it. And basically why it matters, what problems it solves. Satoshi Nakamoto is the creator of Bitcoin. In 2009, white paper was released under that pseudonym. No one knows who or they or she is. Satoshi Nakamoto stopped developing Bitcoin after the lead developer, Gavin Andreessen, had a meeting with the CIA. So they kind of left pretty quickly after that. It's open source. Been around for 5 years. And at its core, it's a decentralized consensus mechanism. It's all the nodes on the network agree about the state of the network. Basically, what address who owns what. It's pretty much just a huge ledger up in the cloud, a decentralized cloud where everything is stored. There's only 21 million in existence. There will only be 21 million. The last one will be mined in 2140.
How can you be so sure?
I'll get into that. I'll take questions after the technical part. The Bitcoin network is extremely powerful, more powerful than the top 500 supercomputers combined. It's only doing the hashing algorithm, SHA-256, that Bitcoin uses. So now, if we're make a transaction, you start with with a wallet. If you download an application on your phone or on your desktop, you'll get a private key and a public key. And Bitcoin uses public key encryption, public-private key encryption to secure this. I can't go into the cryptography details. That's a whole nother session. The private keys are just a 256-bit address. Private key is what is used to sign your transaction that you issue to the network. I'll get to that in just a second. Public key, this is what you post, or a QR code of this online or anywhere where people can tip you or send funds to you. Whoever controls your private key controls your cash. It's just like cash. There's no reversible transactions. Once coins are sent somewhere, it's gone. If you lose your key, those coins are removed from the pool. No one can ever get them. Okay, so what this guy's doing is scanning a QR code that the merchant's holding over. So the merchant is input a dollar amount in US dollars, and it was converted to like the Bitcoin amount. And this guy scans it, and basically then just hit send. And it's a push system where he's gonna the Bitcoins will be sent to the merchant's account. It's different from the pull system like credit cards that we have, and we give them all of our information and hope that only some of that they only take the amount of money that we hope. Things like the target hack can't happen with Bitcoin because it's a pull system. So what happens here is the transaction gets broadcast to every node on the network. It doesn't have to be everyone, and it gets to the miners. Have you guys heard of what Bitcoin miners are? Are there any miners in the crowd? No? One? Two?
I really mind Bitcoin.
Long time ago.
A long time ago.
You can still do it on one of these.
Yes. You used to be able to mine Bitcoins on computers like this. And you'd find these in people's basements. But now, it's gotten mainstream, and there's huge server farms of Bitcoin miners. Mining is a bit of a misnomer. They're really just turning their computers into digital accountants. They're just verifying transactions and securing the network. And they're incentivized to do this with a reward. The miners compete to solve a hard math problem. They basically keep hashing. I'll get into that in a second. They're competing to solve a hard problem. And once one miner solves it, it gets broadcasted out to the network. Basically, one miner saying, "Hey, I've solved this. This is a bunch of transactions," pushing it out to everyone. Everyone checks it quickly, and if it's confirmed, then it gets added to the ledger of every transaction that's ever happened. So since this big ledger, it's called the blockchain. This is the key that makes Bitcoin work. It's about 20 gigs right now. So if you download the client on your laptop, it'll take a while to download. Or you can, there's also mini miners like this, small as Raspberry Pi. Distributes new coins, secures the network. Okay, so the blockchain. The blockchain is basically a chain of blocks of transactions. Each block is a bundle of transactions, as we can see here. And for security, each block references the block previous. So if you were to try to maliciously create a block that was, you can't go back in time and change blocks because each block references a hash of the previous block. Miners collect transactions based on transaction fees, and they're rewarded with transaction fees and the block reward. The block reward is at 25 Bitcoins right now. So whenever a miner gets a block and pushes it out there, they're rewarded with 25. And that's how coins enter the network. That's the incentive that miners have. So when our transaction gets broadcast to the network, it gets added to a block. Like let's say if it gets added here, there's a chance that 2 different miners can solve a block at the same time, because it's more of a lottery. It's not a it's a lottery system of how
It's not first one to solve it.
yeah, it's not first one to solve it, and they're not all working on the same exact blocks. The blocks might have different transactions inside of them. And if that does happen, the miners just keep working on whatever chain is the longest. That's the golden rule. That's part of the protocol that's everyone has agreed to. So they just mine off the longest one, and if your transaction gets orphaned on these blocks, it's not part of the main chain, your transaction will eventually get merged to the main block, the main blockchain. These blocks are mined once every 10 minutes. The network self-adjusts every 2 weeks, adjusts the difficulty to ensure that happens. Small, yeah. And all over that. And you can see that this is the difficulty adjustment. That those numbers are it's just the difficulty level. It's pretty exponential. You can tell that these aren't the increases aren't equal. So it all depends on how much hashing power is added to the network. Miners used to be able to mine on a laptop. Then they moved on to FPGAs and graphics cards, and now they're on to ASICs, application-specific integrated circuits, which basically has the hashing algorithm in silicon, and that's the only thing these things do. So if you go to Walmart.com and Google, or if you go to Walmart.com and type in Bitcoin miner, you'll find a product there, and that's what that product is. Skip that one. Okay. So I know that was a lot of information. Questions on how Bitcoin works? Yes.
How many transactions are in a block?
That's variable. 7 megs right now, or 7 kilobytes.
Ballpark it. How many transactions is that?
It depends on the size of transactions. Bitcoin, at its heart, is a protocol, and every transaction is a little script. It's a stack-based language in the transaction where it basically says, you basically say that send money to this guy, send the change back to me, and you can encrypt.
Send the change. You could send fractions of Bitcoin, right?
Right.
So why is there a change?
Well, there's change because you have to send all of the Bitcoin. Like it's. I'm not sure on that technical question. I know there's a change that's sent back to you.
Okay.
Uh,
So
yes.
I'm just trying to get out like what the cost of each transaction it is on the network, right? So we're paying these miners 25 coins.
We're not paying them those
We're
25.
rewarded 25
Yes.
per thing, right? But that's taking away from, like I'm just wondering, like, let's say if I were to buy a cup of coffee, I wonder how much that transaction, how much a miner is being rewarded for each transaction. Is what I was trying to get at. Like 25 sounds like a lot, right? Because these things are valued at like what, $500 a Bitcoin?
380 right now.
380 right now. Okay. So at some point they were 1,000.
Right.
So 25 grand sounds like a lot for just doing a calculation. If that's every 10 minutes,
That's every 10
that
minutes.
seems
Yeah.
pretty good.
Yeah. Well, that's how we incentivize the miners to get them to do that. And it's not coming out of the pool of coins. That reward is the only way coins can enter the network. That's the only way they're minted.
So if you always get a reward every time a block is completed and blocks consist of transactions, at the point that Bitcoin has stopped being created, that kind of implies that there can't be any more transactions.
Well,
Or is that because
the transaction fees will rise.
The reward for finishing a block presumably gets smaller and smaller and smaller? over
Right.
time?
Every 4 years, the block reward is halved. It used to be 50.
Okay, that's the business. Okay.
So the curve is slower. So it's called mining because it's harder as time goes on. The difficulty increases and the
So
number
not
of.
only does it get harder, but the incentives for doing so get less.
Yes.
Because where it's going, can't you? So I mean, you're going to get to the point where no one's going to want to calculate a block anymore.
Well,
And
that's
don't the transactions stop at that point as well, by definition?
that's when transaction fees will have to rise.
And those are set by,
Those are set by the when you make a transaction, you add a transaction fee to it. If you send it like a fraction of a Bitcoin
yeah,
without a transaction fee, that transaction might not get added for an hour or like 4 blocks because because it's so small, and miners might not be incentivized to grab it. If it's a really important transaction and you need that to finish in 10 minutes, then adding a larger transaction fee will get it completed faster.
so the fees are collected by the miners.
The miners it's lumped in with the block reward on top of.
And the fees are paid in Bitcoin.
Right.
So the bigger transactions themselves.
Yeah, I know,
Yes.
yeah.
Has anyone ever thought about what the environmental impact of mining is causing?
Yes, because there's a lot of work being done that's mostly useless. What this system is, it's a proof of work. They have some alternative currencies have a proof of stake, which works. How does proof of stake work? It depends on who owns coins. There are different systems, but yeah, you have Google proof of stake. But yeah, that is a criticism of Bitcoin. A lot of energy goes into this. But you do have to look at alternatives between like because it's a payment network. The other side of this is like banks, all the money that's used to secure gold or secure the banks, and all of everything that takes up their network. So it's not a perfect system.
So if I want to buy a coin, I have to pay the $380 whatever dollars plus the little tax, which is the percentage you say you have to pay, and the miner is going to get 25 Bitcoins for the 1 Bitcoin I'm buying.
No. That Bitcoin you buy is going to come from somebody's wallet, from someone else. You can get Bitcoins on exchanges or just buying them from somebody, and you don't have to buy a whole Bitcoin. There's 100 million Satoshis. Satoshi is the smallest unit, so it's eight decimal places. So there's plenty of room for change.
Okay, so I buy the 1 coin,
Yes.
$389 plus a little tax on the side for trying to buy it.
Mhm.
Somebody's getting money for doing the transaction, right?
Yes, your transaction will be lumped in with a bunch of transactions, and then within 10 minutes, maybe 20, it might not get added at that block. Then a miner or a mining pool is much more popular. There's a slide on that later. Basically, a bunch of people join a mining pool, and if any of them get solve a block, then that reward is distributed between the pool based on the effort put in. Any more questions on yes?
What does solve a block mean?
Okay, basically,
Are you computing the key, the private key, or somehow decrypting it somehow?
we're not using encryption. We're using SHA-256.
Okay.
Basically, we're taking the hash of the previous block, and we just keep hashing it over and over and over. No, the new block we keep hashing until we get a hash that's lower than a certain amount. Basically, there's a certain amount of difficulty that's set. It's basically I think it's like 30 zeros or 20 zeros. You basically have to hash the new block and end up with a hash that's lower than that amount. Is that
So it's just a mathematical calculation,
right? That's it.
and you just run it through an algorithm until you.
Over and over. Yeah, that's what those chips are doing.
Interesting. Okay.
So it's not a lot of useful things. There are other alternative currencies that have that like solve. You guys have heard of those systems where you can share your computing power to like solve
SETI
cancer?
Online?
Yeah, SETI Home or Folding at Home. There's certain coins that are trying to incorporate that into their proof of work too.
So if I have 30 Bitcoins, where is it? In my phone? Is it in a bank somewhere?
You control the private key to that address that holds 30 bitcoins in it. The bitcoins aren't labeled. You basically can just view where those bitcoins came from, and that address you control, and that is in the ledger. You can track all of that, and you control that key. That's what you control. You don't have any bitcoins on you. You just have that key that authorize them to be moved.
The 20 gig ledger.
Yes. Yeah. And there are lightweight clients that can do the verification without the 20 gigs, but it's not a full client.
So if I have that key on my cell phone, somebody comes by and with one of those automatic readers can read my key from my phone.
Automatic readers, no, but if they got into your cell phone somehow, yes. And it is just like cash, and there's no recourse. Yeah.
They got your private key.
Because they got your private key. Usually, best practice is to have a hot wallet, which like spending cash, and you have a little bit on your phone, and you might have, if you have bitcoins at home, you might have a cold storage wallet, which is basically an address that has never been, a private key that's never touched the internet. Basically, within like an air-gapped computer, you can generate the private key offline and send bitcoins to the public key online. So that private key never touches the internet. So it's 100% secure. You can print that out, put it in a bank vault.
Okay, so I go on the internet and go buy a bicycle for 30 bitcoins, right?
Mm-hmm.
The guy says, send me a picture, and that's great. Okay, I pay the 30 bitcoins, and I get the bicycle. It's a tricycle, a little baby's tricycle. It's not what he promised. Is there an authority that says, hey, give him the money back, blah, blah, or you're in deep doo-doo?
There's not. The same way with cash. But we have programmable money. We can solve this. You can create transactions where you need 2 out of 3 keys instead of just 1. So it allows you and the seller to agree on an arbitrator to solve those problems. Because has anyone had any bad experiences with PayPal? or eBay? Yeah. Imagine a world where you can choose your arbitrator. Like that's what Bitcoin can do for us.
So, can you talk about the Mt. Gox hack then? Because I mean, clearly something wasn't secure in the protocol there, and that they were able to submit packets.
Protocol was fine. They said that it was they said that an exploit called like transaction malleability was an issue, but that only accounted for a handful of coins because we're able to view where the coins went. Because every transaction is public.
Well, except where they go doesn't really matter because you don't actually know who is the true recipient. I mean, you just know where they go in context of the.
Yeah, there's no identity attached to the addresses.
Yes.
$500 million of customer funds were gone missing. Yeah. The analogy I like to use, it was an embezzlement at a bank. Doesn't mean it has nothing to do with really the currency, but it does suck. You have to control your own keys.
Okay, so what you're saying is basically the Mt. Gox's private keys were misappropriated.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, they were. It was U.S. dollars and bitcoins that were missing. Like there was.
Tell us the truth.
No, I've got disadvantages of bitcoins. That exchange had displayed serial incompetence, and for a while you couldn't withdraw funds, and it just. There will be bumps along the road.
So does that mean that the people who had money in that Mt. Gox had their private keys there as well?
Yes, yeah.
As opposed to keeping your private key on a computer that's separated from the internet by an air gap.
Right. Mt. Gox was an exchange. It was the leading exchange that had about 80% of the market share. It had caused multiple crashes in the price because their servers couldn't handle it. And Mt. Gox. Does anyone know what Mt. Gox stands for? Yes.
Magic the Gathering. Something.
Online exchange.
Online exchange.
Yeah. So that's the history of Mt. Gox. Like that name, Magic the Gathering. It wasn't built for the scale. Yeah, that's.
So what's the scenario? Let's say I had, millions of dollars worth of bitcoins, and I wanted to turn them into US dollars, right? How do I do that?
You would go to an exchange,
Like
and
Mt. Gox.
like Mt. Gox.
Yeah.
There's other trusted ones.
Well, that was a trusted one for a while, right? A lot of people trusted them.
Well, yes. You'd go to an exchange, sell a little. You don't have to put them all in at once. Also,
No, but
if
I
you
want to
sold-
cash out.
If you sold that many at the time, it would
Yeah.
at once it would crash the market.
I don't care.
That's
money
you have to do it
everywhere.
through an exchange or a large buyer.
Yeah, but do I have to give, and I don't have to give my private key to get my money out, or do I?
Well, if you would have to send your money to your account with that exchange, and then they would control your funds for good.
Okay.
Give you all this money.
Yeah, so, yeah, that's the other thing, right? How do they get?
How do they get dollars
Yeah,
back?
where's the
Well, who
point?
actually sends the
Yeah,
exchange rate?
at some point, I have to trust someone
Yeah.
that I'm giving them the exchange my key, and I just trust that, okay, they're gonna wire me the money.
Yeah.
But you're not giving them your
God
private
with trust.
Well, you're sending them all of your money. Yeah, you're putting it into that account, that with them. That's on their servers. And then
But you're not giving them your private key.
no, but you don't you've
You're creating a new
relinquished
wallet?
His
control.
wallet doesn't have anything in it now because he's given it all to this other person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're
Okay.
largely playing the role of a bank.
Yeah.
When you give $100 to the bank teller, you trust the bank to add $100 to your account and not to disappear the money you just gave them.
Right, I'm actually saying, what about the other way? I've got a bunch of bitcoins, I wanna turn them into US dollars.
You transfer the Bitcoin to the exchange, and the exchange is supposed to give you cash, US dollars.
Suppose.
There's plenty of reputable exchanges.
Okay.
So what's the volume traded on Bitcoin?
I have a slide in this later.
You get a lot of interesting metrics.
I'm not entirely sure. It's later on. It'll be up there.
So the actual exchange rate itself is set purely on supply and demand.
Yeah, there's a bunch of exchanges all around the world, and there's some small arbitrage opportunities between them, based on like the different currencies. But it's all supply and demand. Yeah, one of the reasons Bitcoin will be volatile for a long time is its low market capitalization right now, and because the price is fixed. Every 10 minutes, 25 are added forever until the reward changes.
Sounds more like a stock exchange than a bank. You're selling something and you're gonna get one Bitcoin's worth however many dollars you have to.
Well, yeah, the exchanges
sell.
the exchanges do act like a stock exchange. Stock.
And so you say if you put millions of dollars of Bitcoins into the exchange and sold it all once, it would be a crash. It's not like a computer crash, it's like a stock market crash where the value of the Bitcoins goes to like $1.
Oh yeah, and there has been evidence of whale investors making a big splash and manipulating the market.
Okay, so it's priced on the margin is what we're saying. Because that's what stocks are, they're priced on the margin.
So how do you stop one of those investors from manipulating the market? I mean, the governments do try to protect their citizenship, from getting that. But
They do try, but also those people are not elected usually. They're appointed. That's one of the advantages of Bitcoin is that no one can determine when we can just start printing money. Like you can't do quantitative easing with Bitcoin. Most of the early adopters for Bitcoin were the cypherpunks from like the 90s. Were like fighting the government on encryption, and libertarians. Libertopia was last week. Did anyone go to that? It was a libertarian conference in San Diego. 80% of the merchants accept Bitcoin there. So that's the big community that is really backing it.
Oh, the government's gonna take notice.
But how do you control? Like the guy in the front, he wants to sell $10 billion of 10 billion bitcoins, right? So he's making a market flip for a purpose, and then he goes, "I changed my mind. Now that it's lower, I'm going to buy more bitcoins." So how do you?
Yeah.
Is there?
There's no.
Then
That's a market dynamic that can't be really changed.
Has anyone taken advantage of something like that?
Yes.
No, like huge though. Like I mean, like yeah.
Recently, there was someone put a huge sell order at $300 when the price was above that, and people kept buying. They kept buying, and then he took it off the market, and then the price jumped back to like 400. Like that's, yeah,
It's like a naked short.
yeah.
What does that mean?
So a naked short, when you short the market, you're supposed to borrow the shares from someone before you sell it. A naked short is where you forgot that you borrowed the shares from someone else.
Yeah.
So you're selling things you don't
You
have?
sell things you don't have, exactly.
There are ways to trade Bitcoin on margin services to do that. Not recommended.
Yes, do not take financial advice this evening.
Yes. Technical questions. Okay.
Competition to Bitcoin?
Yes, there's a few hundred alternative coins that have slight variations. Some have smaller block times, like to be faster. Some of them have different hashing algorithms, so the Bitcoin miners can't point their processing power to those different coins and like make the difficulty fluctuate rapidly. Yeah. More.
That's kind of interesting, because I mean, you said you can't have quantitative easing within Bitcoin,
Right.
because they're finite, but if I can just come along and start creating new cryptocurrencies, who needs quantitative easing at that point?
Well, but who's gonna? You have to get
users,
faith.
though.
Yeah, you have to get trust in the users for that.
Mount
You have to
Knox
get-
Starbucks
I
won't
can
accept
print
anything.
you prop dollars, that's pretty worthless, right?
Well, until people
Until
believe they have
everyone
some
starts
kind of
using
currency. I mean, we have fiat currencies anyway, which are all faith-based.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but people have faith, right?
Okay,
I started believing in Bitcoin when I heard you could buy a
Do we want a
cup of coffee.
15-minute break? This is kind of like the first third. What do you think? Anyone who really wants a break? Anybody?
No, this is.
Okay, we're continuing. Okay, benefits of Bitcoin. You can escape capital controls. Like people in Argentina, who over generations they keep seeing their life savings get wiped away through inflation. Or Zimbabwe. Everyone's seen the barrel of Zimbabwean dollars and pay for a cup of coffee, right? Bitcoin is volatile, but their currency is definitely more volatile. Bitcoin is a safe bet compared to that. Financial freedom. No one can prevent you from sending money. Back when the WikiLeaks released those government cables, the government pressured Visa, PayPal, and MasterCard, and all the payment networks to halt payments to them extrajudicially. There was no legislation, there was no charges ever pressed. And this Bitcoin was one way to supply them with their operating expenditures. Algorithmic regulation, everyone agrees that this amount of Bitcoin will enter the network, and it's protected against quantitative easing. We went over that. Okay, from the merchant side of things, lower fees. Credit cards will charge up to like 3.5%, and retailers work on like 5% margins if they're selling luxury goods. So the lower fees are really the huge financial incentive for merchants. And there's really the barrier to adoption is really just a cell phone at your register, your point of sale. Merchants do not take Bitcoin directly most of the time. They go through a payment processor, which instantly converts it into the US dollar, so they're not exposed to any risk at all. And at the end of the day, that dollar amount is transferred to their bank account.
Don't those guys charge fees?
No, they've been getting a lot of these venture capital money. So right now there's no fees for the first $1 million on some of them.
I've got these business plans. Give it away for free and we'll make it up on volume.
Yeah.
There's less fraudulent transactions. They don't have to worry about chargebacks. Kind of the same thing. That chargebacks and fraudulent transactions are a huge reason why the payment like Visa and MasterCard have fees. Like that covers a lot of it. Also like fraud. Microtransactions. Okay, one Satoshi. That's what one Satoshi looks like. Oh yeah, Bitcoins. Okay, you guys have seen the Bitcoin articles with all those coins? It's ridiculous. Publishing. Imagine reading a blog article and saying and liking it, but wanting to contribute more than just ad revenue. You can send a Satoshi or a nickel or a quarter. Right now, those payment models can't really work because because like it's just not worth it for the transaction fee. Fundraising, imagine Kickstarter, where all you need is a QR code for people to send you cash. Last year, someone had a QR code that said, "Mom, send Bitcoin." It was in the background of an ESPN show. He got $26,000.
Sorry, too much pizza.
Yeah, publishing. There's a lot of different publishing models that can change. Oh, yeah. Who accepts it? Dish Network, Zynga, Stripe. Stripe and Square are the big ones because they're payment providers. WordPress was one of the first ones. Overstock.com is actually going to issue a stock on the blockchain. Because at its core, Bitcoin is a protocol, and different protocols are being built on top of Bitcoin. There's one called Counterparty, where users can create assets that can be traded, and you can issue dividends to those assets very easily, and that kind of skirts around the SEC a little. You can also go to space. Richard Branson is a big proponent.
Yeah, not that one.
Yeah. But let's be honest. Bitcoin doesn't solve any problems we have. We have access to markets. We have credit. Most of us probably have a bank account. But there's only 1 billion people with access to international markets. Like, we can all call a broker and set up an account. The World Bank says 2.5 billion people are underbanked. I think it's more like 6. There's just so much red tape around people getting bank accounts in the developing world. Extreme lack of access. Anyone with a Nokia 1000 phone, the most popular phone in Africa, there's millions of them in there. There's services built on top of Bitcoin that allows you to send money with SMS, or send Bitcoin with SMS. They were doing this with cell phone minutes and using cell phone minutes as a kind of digital currency in Kenya, and M-Pesa was developed around that. This happened 10 years ago, and now M-Pesa has 40% of Kenya's GDP goes through M-Pesa. There's a lot of the developed world is really moving towards mobile payments because they're not getting desktops. They don't have cable like Ethernet. They're skipping the wired aspect of that technology. More people have access to a cell phone than sanitation. Bill Gates, there are now 9 countries in Africa where mobile money accounts outnumber bank accounts. So mobile is where it's at for the developing world. Okay, disadvantages. Volatility, it's going to be volatile for a long time. 51% attack if over 50% of the network is malicious, then they control which blocks get added to the blockchain. Because you always choose the longest block, and if you control the majority of the network, you can do whatever you want pretty much. But
We can't reverse transactions,
you cannot reverse transactions, no.
but you can block all
But
transactions.
you can block transactions, you can undo transactions that you just did. Yeah. But that attack would be extremely expensive and very easy to identify.
Expensive, like
If you were to buy the hashing power,
yeah,
because you can rent botnets on the
like
dark
under
web.
$1 billion.
What if a quantum
No, more.
computer did it?
What?
What if a quantum computer came
I'm
online
not
in
sure.
5 years?
Quantum computers will
Actually, it'd be more along the lines
take
of
out
a
all our
country
encryption.
doing it.
Well, then, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, yeah, like $1 billion is not that much,
Yes,
depending on who you talk to, right? So
Right.
like,
if they ever work.
but,
This is China's plan B.
well,
Well, they do
China
have the
act-
fastest computers, right?
China had Bitcoin information shows on China state-run television. That was preceding the huge spike up to 1,200 gold parity before it crashed. But that spike was entirely due to China.
Yeah, and when it crashed, they shut down their exchange.
They're still running though. Like they've had issues. People's Bank of China's, I don't know, there's a whole cultural side of that. It's hard to identify.
This last line here is interesting. So basically anybody who's acting as
Money transmitter?
money exchange, so anybody who's converting them either into or from some other currency is having to do some kind of reporting to the
Yes.
powers that be.
Yes. If I buy $100 of Bitcoin, next week it's worth 120, and I buy something with that, like buy dinner for some people. That is a taxable event where I need to report that to the IRS. Whether or not it doesn't matter how big of a gain that is. That's one of the biggest barriers to adoption right now for us in the US. There's not an exclusion for that. Like if you bought it if that was with euros instead of Bitcoin, that would be fine. There's limits that if you're under if you spend under a certain limit with foreign currencies, it's fine. It's
How come the IRS finds you though?
I thought it was anonymous.
Bitcoin is not as anonymous
you just
as
said that.
the articles would say. 99% of Bitcoin transactions are traceable to an IP address. Yeah.
So you get on your neighbor's Wi-Fi.
But yeah, the IRS probably won't go after you, but there's always the whole NSA thing. So.
It does sound like the end of the publishing model in that regard. I mean, I don't want to give somebody a nickel for their blog post to have a lot of IRS paperwork.
Yeah.
Remember it for the end of the year and add it up.
The IRS isn't gonna come after you for that. I doubt it.
But don't take my initial advice.
You might read a lot of blogs. Nickels that up.
Okay, so the price for the past 2 years, this was that first spike that Mt. Gox caused. This was the Silk Road. And of course, yeah, that was the Silk Road.
What's the years here? What's the time frame here?
It's hard to read.
It's like 2000.
This is, shoot, I can't see on that.
It says 2 years of your time.
Yeah, this is the past 2 years. This is about, I forget, I'm not sure.
That's it. It's hard to tell the scale here, but
Boy, it says 2 years.
$1,000 is the peak.
Y scale.
Yeah, $1,000, 75, 500, we're right there. Now on a log scale, it doesn't look as bad. Volatility is decreasing a little. The hashing network, Ghash.io, people have been running away from that because they've gotten up to 30% before, or up to 40. Discus Fish is another one that's unknown. So people are aware of that 51% attack. It's one of the widely talked about.
So Ghash and Discus Fish were to collaborate.
Yes, but then once it's shooting your golden goose, the more likely scenario is if hackers got hold of the servers, or hold of their. Yeah.
So the trick is to actually have 51% and persuade everybody else that you don't.
Yeah. Another disadvantage is the distribution curve of Bitcoin right now. About a third of it, like around 47 individuals have. These are all wallets. Because we don't really know for sure. A lot of them are lost. That's one of the bad things about it.
Better than
That's the point, 0.001.
distribution in real money.
That's a good point.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. I mean, so it's 40.
Yeah, this is better. Already doing better.
It is better.
The Gini curve.
Visa does 2,000 transactions per second. PayPal does 40 to 100. Bitcoin does 7. That looks really bad. This is based on the block size, how big each block is. Pretty sure it's 7 kilobytes. But if we were to increase that, we could have more transactions per second. But the block size, the blockchain would get larger faster. That's one issue that no cryptocurrency has solved, where they're experimenting with things. Anyone know what a Merkle tree is?
Yes.
Data structure, yeah, we're working on that. We're basically pruning off nodes and things that we don't need. But there's still still keep every transaction we still care about.
Sorry, that's a good point. So I mean, when you download the app, you get the snapshot of the current ledger.
Yeah.
How does that mean? I mean, does your app have to be constantly pulling in
Yes.
the updates to the ledger? Okay. So if you have a disconnect from the network for any point in time, you get stale, or
Yeah, it's just not 100% up to date.
okay.
Average daily transaction volume. Bitcoin's down at the second to the bottom at 89 million a day. This is transactions on the network, so this does not mean 60 or 89 million are transferred between two people. This is just between two addresses. This is the best metric we have. Yeah, we have a long way to go, but we're almost Western Union, catching up. This is when I talk about I need to move that further up in the to the talk. Keeping Mt. Gox in perspective. Stealing slides from CoinDesk, State of Bitcoin report, recommended if anyone's interested in a lot of hard numbers. Basically, $500 million of customer funds were gone, but there's so many $1 billion in fines, which are AKA cost of business for the competitors, the banks. Regulation. Federal Election Committee has approved Bitcoin transactions for donations to your favorite politicians. IRS released guidelines. It's treated as a commodity. Financial Crimes Enforcement Unit regulates it as a currency. The head of the Financial Crimes Enforcement Unit, Vincent, has said that it's still easier to launder US dollars than Bitcoins. Get a little defensive. SEC approved Bitcoin-backed EFT. Second market. There's probably going to be the first regulated Bitcoin exchange in America, so that's probably the exchange you'd want to use. The Winklevoss twins are big into Bitcoin. They control 1% of them. They've released a Winkdex, basically an index of what a Bitcoin is worth, like a price feed. This is pretty much the legality of like whether or not a country is hostile to Bitcoin cryptocurrencies. Bitlegal.io has more information if you want to check out why Iceland is red or Vietnam. That's Vietnam, yeah. It's red.
Nice.
Kind of surprised after Iceland's meltdown. But anyway.
Yeah.
So what's the color code on that?
Green is good. Yellow is iffy. Yellow means that the central bank has warned their customers, or warned the population about it. I'm surprised that India is yellow because there's a lot of remittances in there. The remittance market is a huge use case for Bitcoin because Western Union makes like $100 billion a year in remittances, mostly from like developing countries. Like the more developing. The more underdeveloped you are, like the higher the fees are. So this is like a great use case. Of course, the ecosystem needs to develop, and that's happening. But yeah, in India, they're tech savvy. They have a huge population of remittances. That I think if we're gonna have a huge spike because of a mass adoption, India is the next China. Don't quote me on that. BitPay and Coinbase are the two largest payment processors. 330 million was the last round that they had of VC. They've got 30,000 merchants. They're adding 1,000 merchants each week. They process $1 million in Bitcoin payments every day. They had 100 million in 2013. Adoption metrics, key things. Number of Bitcoin-backed VC startups, 7 times as many, 12 times as much VC investment. And net hash rate is kind of exploded, over 600 times. More mainstream media mentions. If you have a Bloomberg terminal, you can check the price of Bitcoin. It's on Google Finance and Yahoo. Okay, how to get Bitcoins if you want to. Coinbase.com is one of the easiest ways with a credit card. You do have to submit another form of identification. Localbitcoins.com if you want to just find someone and do a cash deal. Localbitcoins.com holds escrow for that. Exchanges we talked about, or ATMs. There's 6 ATMs in San Diego. One in downtown Johnny Brown's. You just give it cash and it spits out bitcoins. It's only one way, not two way. The future, crypto 2.0. Basically, services that are built on top of Bitcoin. We have programmable money, but that script that runs on Bitcoin, it's not that powerful. It doesn't have loops. It's very, very constrained because this is still an experiment. Crypto 2.0 are basically building like a Turing complete language in the network, so you can create any type of contract and put it onto the blockchain, and you can execute it. So you can trade digital assets that represent a barrel of oil. You can create DAOs, distributed autonomous organizations, where anyone can join, or you can set limits on who can join. Bitcoin can be seen as a digital autonomous organization. Anyone can join the network to become a worker and mine and get paid for it. Smart contracts, you can create all sorts of things. Decentralized marketplaces are coming. Open Bazaar, it's basically going to be a decentralized eBay where you can assign an arbiter to settle differences. End on this quote from CEO of PayPal. I really like Bitcoin. I own Bitcoins. It's a store of value, distributed ledger. It's a great place to put assets, especially in places like Argentina with 40% inflation. $1 today is worth 60 cents in a year, and a government's currency does not hold value. It's also a good investment vehicle if you have an appetite for risk, but it won't be a currency until volatility slows down. That's it. Questions? Nothing?
The infrastructure ever goes down, we're screwed.
Why? Well, what do you mean, like the infrastructure? Because it's distributed network.
No.
So-
I mean, if we all become reliant on bitcoins in order to be able to live our daily lives with our cup of joe from Starbucks, and the power goes out.
That's true, yeah.
The same boat we're in with.
Well, that's true.
Wouldn't you say that it's
a lot less.
True, I've seen Starbucks close because of power outage.
Yes.
I was wondering, is there a way to, we talked about how the private key should be handled like cash if it's the authorization for all your Bitcoin assets associated with that key. Is it sort of along the lines of the last question, if you're somehow offline, off the network, is there a way to somehow create a transaction and then have like a private key that represents only that transaction, so then if I were in some place where there's absolutely no connection to the internet, I could physically hand that
Yes.
to somebody?
That's possible, yes.
Okay. Is that possible? Is that done today, or is that
Yes.
like, it's not just theoretical?
No, that's doable, yeah.
Oh, okay.
You give them a piece of paper with a really long number on it.
Yeah. So you can, or USB.
You can take your wallet and create other private keys that are only worth X amount.
You can't distribute funds offline. No.
Okay.
You can send those transactions, and then you have to. Those transactions do have to hit the network.
Sure.
Yeah.
So if you go to this ATM and put money in, does it give you a piece of paper with those numbers?
No, you have a QR code on your app on your phone, and it scans that, so that's your public key, and then it sends $20 worth to your phone. If anyone needs a wallet, airbits.co. It's a good start, San Diego startup, to get a wallet.
And the wallets, they don't have 20 gigs of data with them.
No, your clients on your phone do not authenticate or verify the transactions. They can tell when the transaction has hit the network, and when it's been confirmed, but it can't verify it itself. It doesn't have the whole ledger. Right? That's it?
From a developer perspective.
Oh, yes, from a developer perspective, there is a Java library for Bitcoin. I forgot what it was. Sorry. But there is a lot of room for disruption. There's a lot of room for apps. One example of something. Proofofexistence.com. This is an application built on top of Bitcoin. Basically, it can prove that a document existed at a certain point in time, because Bitcoin's basically those nodes are basically timestamp servers that mine. You take a hash of a document, like a will or another document that you need to prove existed at a certain time, and you put that hash onto the blockchain, because you can onto the blockchain. So it's there. It's a international ledger that's there, and then when you need to prove that you had that document, you can show that you have the PDF, the hash matches, and that lawyers are using that instead of notaries now. Not a lot, but a few.
So basically you've got non-Bitcoin transactions sitting on the blockchain.
Yes, it's not just, Bitcoin is not just money for the internet. Bitcoin is the internet of money. We can program money. We can do amazing things with it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know. It's a lot of information.
So, when you talk about wallets, you carry a wallet on your phone.
Yes.
So if I have an Android, it's written in Android.
Yeah.
If I have an Apple, it's on the iOS.
Right.
So can I, as a developer, create my own wallet?
Yeah, you can create your own wallet. You can create anything. Yeah.
So where would you go to find information about what's the protocol then? How does that wallet talk in?
There's a developer guide at bitcoin.org I'd recommend if anyone wants to read more on the technical details that I kind of hand-waved over. Be careful if you make your own wallet, because it is cash.
How
yeah.
would you trust anybody who made a wallet?
That's true.
I go to the Apple store and download the iOS wallet and just you can
Cross your fingers. No. Trusted reviews.
Apple vetted it.
Ah, thank you.
Okay, that's it. Thanks for your time.